So, I'll stop in a second. So, tell me about the Bracero program and housing and so forth.
Well, one of the things that I've seen a lot that kept coming up in the agriculture and the workers was that the lemon was year round, and so they initially, the preference was to have the families here year round, that they bought into the community and they stayed here. The Bracero program comes in around the war. In fact, the wars have had a tremendous influence in the way this community has been populated. World War I, for example, brings in the migrant workers from Mexico. It's why I said a little earlier that when you look at Carpinteria, the Carpinteria that we know is really established by Anglo failed gold miners and people that are coming over to want to work the land somehow. And so if you look at the community of Carpinteria just in the names of its streets, for example, there's one Spanish surname street in the entire community. We think of ourselves as a Mexican town, kind of. I think that's always been a feeling. But there are no streets that are named after.
Which street, Serena?
No, Serena. We're out here in Serena Park. That's not a. Oh, it is a surname, isn't it? Frank Serena. But it's more a serene kind of a thing. I don't think it's equated to the Spanish language so much. The only Spanish surname street that I know of is Alvarado Street, which is right in back of the St. Joseph's Parish. It's a little tiny street, the nothing street, and it's Alvarado Street, named after, was it Jesus Alvarado, whatever, the guy that lived there.
Well, but so your point is...
In Santa Barbara, every street is Spanish surname. You look at Carpinteria, if it had been developed by a Latino presence, you would have seen a bunch of Spanish surname streets. There are none outside of Alvarado Street. And Alvarado doesn't move into the area until 1900. So...
but the Lemons, they required full-time people.
So that's why I say that I don't think that this really was a Mexican community. It was really founded by whites and Anglos, as we sit here now. But with World War I, the same thing happened in both wars, I and II, is that the young men went off to war and they depleted the working force. And so in the 1920s, or during the war or whatever, we start bringing over, encouraging labor to come over to pick the lemons and pick the fruit, pick the tomatoes, pick the walnuts, whatever needed picking. And so it's there that all these families that become our, what do we want to call it, our long-time Latino families are established. So the Campos, as my family, is over here about 1927 or 28. The Gonzaleses are coming over around somewhere in the 20s there. Anyways, all of these families, I think, are rooted after the World War I, or during it, after. And you also have the Mexican Revolution going on. And the Mexican Revolution, and we got the Pancho Villas and the Emiliano Zapatas and Francisco what was his name? Carranza. All these guys. A lot of the revolution in Mexico was fought on religious principles. Church and state stuff. The church owned too much stuff. The government wanted it back. The Crucero movement, where they became martyrs, and were shot on sight. A lot of these people came over, escaping because of that. Yes. And, I know both from, especially from my mother's side of the family, I know her parents were over here. The reason why she ends up getting married to my dad, is that they had somehow come over here, but they were looking for work. And they were hunted people. They didn't want to, expose themselves to assassination or whatever. So you have this one movement that brings in all these Mexican families, the core group, and then in the 40s, you have them going off to war again. And the war has a whole different effect, because all of these Latino youth, who were discriminated against in school and given very poor educations. I mean, they were the workforce for the lemon industry, and they all go off to fight for their country, which is the United States of America. And when they come back from the war, for one thing, they're very patriotic Americans. When John McCafferty was writing his book on the children of Aliso School, the school for the Mexican children, we had the privilege of going to some of the service groups that had a lot of Latino members, like the Kiwanis group, and which are made primarily of veterans from the war and other Latinos. I mean, patriotic Americans, you will not find more patriotic people than these people. And I mean, the way that they sing the Star-Spangled Banner and pledge allegiance to the flag, I mean, it brings tears to your eyes. Yet, these are the guys that got very bad educations, poor educations, were expected to become laborers, went off to fight for their country, came back with new expectations. You know, they weren't going to be a very docile working force anymore. They wanted their own businesses. They started becoming very entrepreneurial. They began to demand rights. And so it's interesting to me that, they came back emboldened, about their place in this country. And from some initial hardships there in the 40s and 50s, became very entrenched in this community and are its biggest supporters and of this country. Anyways, where were we? We're with lemons?
Well, we were...
housing. The housing. Okay. So then, the war thing, these guys don't go back to the lemon fields when they come back. My dad goes in to work at, I believe, the Mutual, which had kept people out of the packing houses. That was a segregated packing house. They had no Latinos in it. They picked the fruit, but once the fruit went into the packing houses, only white hands were allowed to touch the fruit. And this remained up until about 1943 or 1944, when they started a Latino training program where they brought in some women from the high school that they allowed into the packing house to begin to also touch the fruit. And they kind of integrated that packing house, and pretty amazing. Anyways, when they come back, the men, like my dad, he goes in to work at the Mutual, and one of the foremen got kind of heavy with them. And they looked at him and said, we don't have to take this from you. And they dropped their stuff, they walked off the job. But something that they would have endured.
Like your dad walked off the
job? Oh, he walked off. Actually, they fired the other guy. But my dad said, you fire him, I'm gone too. And he walked off the job. And so, but they weren't going to be treated, like the second-class servants, citizens that they had been. We fought in the war. We were out there. We died along with everybody else. And anyways, so I think that's what encouraged the braceros to come in. And so...
Who were the braceros?
The Mexican labor force, there were men that were brought over in a program with the United States and Mexico. So they were your seasonal people. And so they stayed at what they called the labor camps. And there were two labor camps. There was one which was right next to Reyes Market, where Reyes currently sits. Reyes Market will not be there forever. So we'll say Carpinteria Avenue and what's the street? Elm? Holly, Linden Avenue. So on that corner there, Reyes Market is currently there, and the labor camp for the Carpinteria Mutual was right there. I'm not sure what's there now. I'd have to go look.
I think there's a massage place.
Oh yeah, it's all that stuff.
And an auto repair.
That's right. That was the mutual labor camp.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, and then the Carpinteria Lemon Association camp, that was right next on the north side of the Aliso School. It was right next to the Aliso School, so it was right there. So there were two of them, one for each packing house, and their own workers. So sometime in the late 40s, I think maybe 1948, I might be wrong, the Bracero program begins, and those men are at each one of the camps, and they are the working force now of the lemon industry. And about in the late 50s, early 60s, the lemon was about played out. There wasn't as much demand for lemons anymore. And so in Santa Barbara, you had, let me count them, I'm going to name them, and so we'll figure out. Santa Barbara County, in our vicinity, we have the original C.D. Hubbard Fruit Company, which has now changed names in 1937 to the Carpinteria Lemon Association. So you got one. You've got the Mutual, which is a little further down the street on 6th Street, and that's the Carpinteria Mutual Citrus Association. That's two. You have the Crocker Sperry, which was in Montecito, which somehow joins forces with the Carp Lemon Association, the CLA. And you had the Johnson Fruit Company, which is at the beginning of Santa Barbara, down around where the industrial area is. And then you had the Goleta Lemon Association. So basically 5 packing houses at the time, coming up into the 60s, with a Crocker already having expired. And the packing houses are kind of saying, well, we can't support this many packing houses anymore. And so what happens is that the CLA, the Mutual, and the Johnson all join forces in 1962 and merge into the Santa Barbara Lemon Association. But the Santa Barbara Lemon Association is housed in Carpinteria. It's on Walnut Street at the end. That's the offices. And the packing houses are still there. The only, the Crocker Sperry has gone by the boards, had already become a part of Carpinteria, and so they're not mentioned as a part of the merger, but in a way they are. And the Goleta Lemon decides that they don't want to join forces and make it all 4 into the Santa Barbara Lemon Association, so they stay apart. They don't join. But this is 1962 when the merger happens. All right. The Bracero program appears to peter out and finish in the mid-60s. That's what we're going to use. And I'm not sure if that's 64, 5, or 6, but it's right in there somewhere. And it's at the time right after the merger. So I think what you're seeing is that simply that the demand has lessened to the point where they don't need the braceros anymore. Oh, and a bracero, the translation is a worker, an arm. Brazo is arm, bracero, the arms of the...
And could you say something about that's when you recall the worker camp was torn down in about the mid-60s next to Aliso?
I don't remember the one next to Aliso getting torn down so much as the Mutual, which was by Reyes. That one goes, and it just becomes a big expanse of nothing. And I think they moved in trailers or something. I don't remember. But the one by Aliso also got knocked down. That one was kind of cute, the one next to Aliso. I don't remember. It was always kind of enclosed, so you really couldn't get in there that much. Mm-hmm.
Can you say anything about more recently the overcrowding in neighborhoods?
Okay. Well, what I wanted to say about that was that one of the things that I have found very interesting is that wealth, I think, to the Mexican families was grounded in land. And what is amazing to me is to see how many of the labor force, all these lemon pickers and stuff, bought their own homes. I mean, they bought all of 7th Street, all of what we call Old Town, 9th Street, Hollywood, what they call Hollywood. All of those places were abandoned by the white families, and they all got bought up by the Mexican families. And that's what made the Aliso School, when it was built in 1935, it made it a de facto segregation type of school, because the school board, could say that, well, we're not separating the schools. That's where the kids all live. The original Aliso School was actually right next door to where the public library is right now. But it was picked up, it was traded. It was traded for the land at Aliso, and they built the land at Aliso, which conveniently moved the school to where the Mexicans had all purchased. And anyways, the land owning by the Latino families, I think is tremendous, that they all own their own homes and they have their own little ranches and things. I mean, they were able to put money away and buy things. Now the overcrowding with the families, I did experience that firsthand as a teacher and as an administrator. I'm not sure what you want me to say about that, but I mean the conditions, for these families was incredibly miserable. And
why did it happen? Because they couldn't. Not enough people could afford to have their own home, or
by that time, I think maybe, I might be wrong, but maybe we were having a different class of migratory workers coming in. I'm not sure. I tell you that the kids that we had in the preschool program were all kids whose parents were really quite poor and quite uneducated. And I kind of see the first wave that came in after the 20s was a pretty educated wave. And they're the people that bought up and rooted in Carpinteria. It could be that second wave or third wave, whatever it was, when I'm now teaching and I'm seeing all these families coming in, they're really poor. They can't go out and buy things. And so the only way that they can make it is, and a lot of them did do this, would be to rent, and so in some cases even buy housing tracts, and then divide them into things where you had 3, 4, 5, 6 families all living together, sharing space. And I remember going into some of the homes, especially the ones that were in the beach area, over in 3rd Street and the Sandyland area there. And, seeing them all kind of all scrunched in. And I remember visiting one, I was looking for the mother of one particular kid, and I cannot remember for what reason, but the mom and her couple of kids were living in a space.
Don't get up.
Okay. We're living in a tiny little space. It just had room for a bed and maybe a chair. It was kind of concrete, and no bathroom facilities, water, nothing. So she was renting the space at the time for, even by today's standards, the outrageous sum of about $600 a month for that little space. And in order to eat, to go to the bathroom, bathe, she had to go into the house that it was next to, where there were all kinds of other families living. And so, that was the way many of these families were living.
Why is it less so now, do you think? Less overcrowding now?
It could be that there's less work. People go where there's work. And I don't know, I think things have changed quite a bit with the kinds of jobs that are available here. What's the number one economy now, Larry? The flowers are probably still going, avocados are still going, but it looks like we're more of a tourist place now. I'm not sure what the number one economy is.
And some high-tech businesses.
And a lot of high-tech businesses, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, let's see. So you've covered a lot of ground. Do you want to talk anything about Warrior football or the mascot?
The mascot, I was pretty neutral on that. I was a Warrior. To me, I don't know, change it into a Spartan and keep the Warrior name. It doesn't have to, be Chismahu or whatever they named the warrior guy on the. Yeah, I mean, we don't even have Plains Indians in California, and I think that with the bonnet and the whole thing, it's even incorrect in that way, isn't it? So I mean, change it to some other warrior. You can still be warriors, but I'm pretty neutral on that.
How about when you went to high school? Had the new high school just been built and?
It was being built. My brother was a part of the first graduating class at the new, what I still call the new high school, which was in what year? 1967. Is that right?
I think so. I'm not sure. So
6, 7, or 8, something like that.
So the high school was finished in about 67 or 68?
Well, my brother actually graduated from there, and he graduated in 68. I graduated in 66.
And were you at that school? Were you at the new high school, the one on Foothill?
I student taught there.
Oh, but you weren't a student there.
No.
You were at where Main
Where
School?
no, where the middle school. Yeah, that was our high school. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Do you see the demographics changing here in the area, and any thoughts about the future of Carpinteria or any wishes for the future?
I mean, to be a Carpinterian was always such a. It was it was an honor to be a Carpinterian. You know, the pride of being a Carpinterian is so ingrained in us. I'm not sure exactly why. I mean, even though we have this segregationist past in the community from about the 20s to 47, and some real contentious times going into the 50s as a result of these, and the bilingual education. Still. I don't know. I mean, carpenters are Carpinterians. It doesn't matter if you're Latino, Asian, Anglo, or whatever. I mean, we're all Japanese. I mean, we're all kind of united as we've helped this community be what it is. It's just an idyllic place. So I just want it to always kind of be that way. I don't know if the current generation will have that same kind of thing, because it's not the same community. I mean, to me growing up, Carpinteria was a playground, when I got up out of bed and walked out of my home, I mean, we lived on 9th Street, which was called Hollywood, and but you take a few short steps and you're right in the middle of Carpinteria, and Carpinteria was a walking and a bike accessible community. You really didn't need an automobile to be traveling around the community itself. And even Summerland, I mean, we spent a lot of time coming up to Summerland. We would jump on our bikes, go over the San Ynez Bridge, and then just take what is the Via Real, and we'd just come up here. Sometimes we go play ball on the Summerland school site, and then kind of zip back. It was just a place where I don't think your parents worried about you. Very safe place, and everybody knew who you were.
Do you feel there's still discrimination or segregation in Carpinteria?
Well, I think there always is. Somehow there always is, but to what degree, I don't know. It's not like, I mean, there are stories that I have where there were racial slurs that were a part of growing up. A story that I've told many times, might as well tell it on camera, is I remember going to the movie theater, which at the time was the Trade Winds. It's now the Plaza. It started as the Alcazar. But I remember going to the movie theater, and we would always kind of sneak in treats. I don't think they discouraged it, but I always remember a Mexican kid that we grew up with had gone in with a lunch pail, and after the movie was over, we all walked out, and he tried to get on his bike, and there was a little bike area over where the deli house is, and he went over there, gets on his bike, and starts pushing off to pedal, and he's got a basket where he's got his lunch pail in front, and his bike just tumbled over, and the lunch pail fell and opens up, and out spills tortillas and beans. And I'll always remember this like it was yesterday, having these Anglo kids that I went to school with, circle him and just start laughing at him because he ate beans and tortillas. And I remember I was a person that I had a real sense of, I don't know, justice. And I didn't go over there and try to protect him. I felt ashamed too. It was funny, you know, I mean, that you would feel that way, and I just kind of walked down, what is that, Elm Street, or what is that, that's that street next to the lumber yard. And I just kind of put my head down and I went home. You know, I didn't want to be associated with that kind of thing. I've always felt bad about that. I don't think it would have been my place to jump in and try to defend the kid Joe, but that was the kind of community that we lived in. You know, you kept things that were Mexican inside your house. It wasn't something you shared with the Anglo community. So even, you know, despite all that kind of stuff, I mean, you still, that was just the way things were, and it didn't kind of, I don't want to say minimize the experience, because obviously it must have, but you know, it was just the way things were.
Still, you and your friends were segregated, were integrated. You had Anglo friends and all.
No, yeah, always. Although one of my favorite little things to tell is that anytime that we had Anglo friends come over, because we lived very close to Aliso School. 9th Street is right there by Aliso School. So every once in a while, some of our white friends we'd bring them over to the house, and my mom would always call out "Escondan los frijoles," which means hide the beans.
Really?
It's true. True story. But I mean, it was that kind of thing. You didn't show that you ate tortillas, beans, or did things that were Mexican. I've always said Taco Bell did a great service to the Mexican American community by legitimizing Mexican food and selling it for 19 cents or whatever the price was when they first started. And you know, Delgado's was the real first restaurant in Carpinteria that served food that was Mexican cuisine in the, I can't remember the exact date, but that's also in the 60s. And it just seemed so late that if you wanted to actually get up and go have a sit-down Mexican meal at a restaurant, you had to go to Santa Barbara. You had to go to Rosie's Cafe or do something like that, but there was none of that in Carpinteria.
So Delgado's was the first Mexican restaurant?
Mm-hmm. They had a takeout thing that they did there, and they had the tortilla factory. It had been a service station, but the service station was taken down, and they went the full Mexican cuisine route right there in the 60s. About the same time as Taco Bell. It became lucrative to sell Mexican food, and it became legitimatized, if I said that word right.
Interesting. Lastly, tell me a little bit about the books you were involved with.
Oh, that was fun.
Let's see, the story of the Anglo kids laugh. When would that have been when the kids laughed at the kid with the tortilla and beans?
It would have been, I was born in 48. I would have been in 4th or 5th grade, so probably add 10 years to that. So probably about 57, 58.
So yeah, well, tell me about when your books came out and what books they are.
Okay, I helped, I co-wrote 2 books on Carpinteria with the publishing house Arcadia. They were a part of the Images of America series that they put out. Dave Moore is really was the guiding force to do this. He gathered up a group of us, and we all took areas that we had a particular interest in, and we each wrote our chapters. Louis Panazon wrote the football section. If you want to know anything about football, Louis is your man. And he has an entire book that he wrote about football and all the teams and stuff. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but I'm sure it's a collector's edition at this point. He didn't publish that many of them, but Louis did that. And I'm very particularly, I like history, so I wrote all the beginning chapters of the book, which have to do with Carpinteria's history, and I wrote about agricultural chapter as well, and a chapter on the Mexican-American experience. That was very dear to me, and I wanted to honor the Latino community in some way, so they allowed me to put a chapter on the Mexican-American experience in the book. And Dave was more interested in just community, the stores, the beach, the Thunder Bowl, the state park, and so all those chapters are his. And Tom Moore was our photographer. He's the guy that made everything look pretty. So it was a nice joint effort. There were 4 of us that did that. And then we did a second book. We found that we still had plenty of stories to tell, so we did. And we added Bonnie Clelm, who is from La Conchita, so we added a chapter on that. I did a chapter on Summerland, which made me an expert on Summerland. That was fun to do. It is so self-contained in Summerland that that's a place that you can really tell the history and pretty much get it right because it's so small. So that was a lot of fun to do.
And when was that done about?
Oh gosh, what did we do? It's probably in the...
I can look at the copyright notice in the book.
Well, I could bring down a book,
Yeah,
but...
I have them, yeah.
Could be 2006, 7, 8, something like that.
Yeah.
Well, it was after I retired, so it's probably 2007, 2008, 2009. I want to show you something before you close the camera, though.
Sure.
See if I can get to it readily. I hadn't thought of doing this until right now, but...
No hurry.
Oh, come on, where are you?
I'll pause the tape to speed. Okay, yeah, and what do you have there?
Okay, I have here a state register for public elementary schools, which is from, what is the year here? I'm going to take my glasses off here. I'm not sure what the year is, but I know my dad is a first or second grader at the time, so he was born in 26. He would be about 6 or 7 years of age, so probably 1932, 1933.
Get a shot of the cover of it.
Yeah, looks like this. And a couple of things that are noteworthy to me was one is that I don't know why this appears to be showing all the Latino kids that were in the grade, and most of them are going to Aliso School, but some of them are going to Ocean School. Ocean School was right over here, where if they would have ever built a Toro Canyon school, it would have been placed right where the Ocean School had been from the 1800s. It also has the Rincon School listed, which is really interesting. That's where the Lions Club Park is now. So, but anyways, you can't really see this, but the absenteeism of the Mexican children is amazing. My dad there, no disrespect to my father, Sal, but in 20 days of attendance between January 9th and February 8th, he was in school 2 days. Now, you know, if it would have been me and these were my students, I would have been in those houses making sure the kids were coming to school. It doesn't seem like school was that important for these children. 130 days of absenteeism in this group of 20 kids or so.
And let me get a close-up of the neighborhood, rather than the address.
Oh, I love the fact that the kids, their names are listed here, and then it shows the parent that apparently was registered the child.
Hold it still.
That apparently registered the child for school. In my dad's case, it was his father, Santiago, so he's listed there. But what is really fun for me is that it gives the place of residency. So it says residence right here, and rather than an address, it gives an area of Carpinteria. So if you're from the area where Delgado's restaurant currently sits, that's called Old Town. So if you're one of the students that lives in that area, your residence is listed as Old Town. And if you are from, let's say, 9th Street, where I grew up and where my dad grew up, it's called Hollywood. So it's not 9th Street, it's not 4671 9th Street, which is where our residence was.
Okay, and why do you think it was named Hollywood?
Okay, so Hollywood here, no 9th Street, Hollywood. And it's not 7th Street, because 7th Street is clearly marked, and they're, of course, parallel to each other. It's Hollywood, it's 9th Street. There are a lot of stories about why it is Hollywood. I've heard probably a half dozen different reasons why it's called Hollywood. But the one that resonates the most with me is that around the time period of the First World War, there were a number of studios that filmed in this area, including the Flying A, which I think filmed out of Santa Barbara somewhere, or maybe even Summerland. And it is recorded that a Hollywood studio came to Carpinteria and filmed a battle scene around the Franklin Creek area and 9th Street. And so they had people dressed up in soldier uniforms and things who did a little war scene.
You don't know what film that was, do you?
I do not know what film that was. It would be wonderful. Yes. It'd be interesting. I'm sure it doesn't exist anymore. It's probably lost. But that makes sense to me that would have happened. And then people just started calling it Hollywood after that. That makes sense to me. So.
Okay, well, thanks so much, Jim, for all your wonderful thoughts and your wonderful service to the city of Carpinteria. And
thank you.
And your continuing wonderful service. And you also mentioned your mom. Can we get a close-up shot of your mom on the cover of your new album? I'll hand it to you.
Okay, yeah, let's do some promotional work here. In my retirement, besides helping write a couple of books, and I don't know, maybe I need to start writing again. There's a lot still to be said about this community and other things. But I've been doing music, and this is our 4th CD. This is...
What's the name of your band?
Well, when I was at Maine School, all the kids and the teachers would refer to me, and the parents would refer to me as Dr. C. So I thought, let's take the Dr. C and let's make a Dr. C and what? I'm working with Andy White. He's the producer of the group. So I said, let's say White Magic Band. Will that work? Andy said, yeah, that's cool. So it's Dr. C and the White Magic Band.
Can you hold it still?
And for the 4th CD, it's called From the Volumes of Sunrise to Sunset. And
who's that on the cover?
And on the cover, I decided to use this picture of my mother.
Change the angle a little bit this way. No, this way. Okay, that's good. And that's your mom?
And about 1946, a couple of years before I was born. So I kind of am looking at this kind of metaphorically.
Delia Campos.
Yeah, Delia Campos, a real beauty in her day, still is. And there she is, about 1946, a couple of years before I was born. And I kind of look at her as the sunrise part of the title of the new album. And on the back, we'll give a shout out to my mentor teacher at Carpinteria High School, John Tissot, who passed away about 1.5 years ago. I've used all of his artwork on our albums, and so one more here. There's a sunset scene. So we have From the Volumes of Sunrise to Sunset.
Okay. Well, thanks so much, Jim.
You're welcome. Thank you.